Imagine a country finally at peace after a long and brutal war. That was America in April 1865. The Civil War was over, and a sense of relief and hope filled the air. At the heart of this new beginning was President Abraham Lincoln, the man who had led the nation through its darkest hours. He was the 16th President of the United States, a towering figure not just in height, but in history. His leadership during the Civil War was legendary, but his greatest achievement was the Emancipation Proclamation, the act that began the end of slavery in America. As the country started to heal its wounds, Lincoln was seen as the architect of a new, more unified future. People looked to him to guide the nation through the difficult process of Reconstruction. But in a single night, all of that hope would be shattered by a single gunshot, a moment that would change the course of American history forever. On the evening of April 14, 1865, just 5 days after the Confederate Army surrendered, President Lincoln decided to take a much-needed break. He and his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, went to Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., to see a popular comedy called Our American Cousin. The atmosphere was celebratory. The war was over, and the president was out among the people, sharing in the collective sigh of relief. Security was surprisingly light that night. With the conflict ended, the imminent danger that had surrounded the president for 4 long years seemed to have vanished. No one could have imagined that a new threat, driven by hatred and a refusal to accept defeat, was lurking in the shadows of the very theater where the nation's leader sought a moment of peace. The man who would forever be linked to this tragedy was John Wilkes Booth. Unlike a shadowy conspirator, Booth was a celebrity of his time, one of the most famous actors in America. He was known for his charisma and dramatic performances on stage. But behind the handsome face and public adoration was a man filled with deep-seated rage. Booth was a fervent supporter of the Confederacy and a staunch believer in white supremacy. He despised Lincoln, viewing him not as a savior of the Union, but as a tyrant who had destroyed the Southern way of life. As the war came to a close and Lincoln spoke of giving voting rights to some black Americans, Booth's hatred intensified. His initial plan to kidnap the president evolved into a far more sinister plot: assassination. He believed that killing Lincoln would throw the Union government into chaos and inspire the defeated South to rise again. That fateful night at Ford's Theater, Booth put his deadly plan into action. Knowing the theater's layout intimately, he timed his move perfectly. He waited for a moment in the play that he knew would generate a loud burst of laughter from the audience, a sound that would muffle the crack of his pistol. Around 10:15 p.m., he slipped unnoticed into the hallway leading to the presidential box. The guard who was supposed to be on duty had left his post. Booth quietly opened the door to the box, where Lincoln sat with his back to the entrance. He raised a small, single-shot Derringer pistol, aimed at the back of the president's head, and fired. The bullet lodged behind Lincoln's right ear. A military officer in the box, Major Henry Rathbone, tried to stop Booth, but the assassin slashed him with a large knife. In a move of pure theatricality, Booth then leaped from the box onto the stage below, a drop of over 10 feet. He reportedly shouted Sic semper tyrannis, Latin for thus always two tyrants, before limping off the stage and escaping out the back door into the darkness. Chaos erupted inside the theater. At first, the audience thought the commotion was part of the play, but Mary Lincoln's piercing screams made the horrifying reality clear. Doctors in the audience rushed to the presidential box. They quickly realized the wound was mortal. Lincoln was paralyzed and barely breathing. Carrying him out of the theater was deemed too risky, so soldiers carefully carried the dying president across the street to a boarding house owned by a man named William Peterson. They laid him diagonally on a bed that was too short for his tall frame. As news of the attack spread through the city, government officials, doctors, and friends gathered in a solemn vigil around his bedside. Through the long night, they watched and waited, but there was nothing anyone could do. The next morning, on April 15, 1865, at 7:22 a.m., Abraham Lincoln died. He was 56 years old. The man who had saved the Union had been struck down in the first days of its newfound peace. The news of Lincoln's death sent a tidal wave of shock and grief across the nation. People who had just been celebrating the end of the war were now plunged into mourning. In the North, bells tolled and businesses closed. People wept openly in the streets. Even in the South, Many who had considered him an enemy were stunned by the brutal act. The assassination was seen not as a political act, but as an attack on the nation itself. Lincoln's body lay in state first at the White House and then at the Capitol Rotunda, where thousands of mourners filed past to pay their last respects. A funeral train was then organized to carry his coffin on a long, winding journey back to his home in Springfield, Illinois. The train traveled through 180 cities and 7 states, following a route similar to the one he had taken to Washington as president-elect. At every stop, day and night, massive crowds gathered to catch a glimpse of the train, to honor the fallen leader who had become a martyr for the cause of freedom and unity. While the nation mourned, the largest manhunt in American history was underway. The search for John Wilkes Booth and his co-conspirators was a massive operation involving thousands of soldiers and detectives. Booth, with a broken leg from his jump onto the stage, managed to escape Washington with an accomplice. For 12 days, they hid in the swamps and forests of Maryland and Virginia, relying on a network of Confederate sympathizers for help. But the net was closing in. On April 26th, Union soldiers tracked Booth and his accomplice to a tobacco barn in Virginia. They surrounded the barn and demanded their surrender. The accomplice gave up, but Booth refused. The soldiers set the barn on fire to force him out. As the flames engulfed the structure, a soldier shot Booth through the neck. He was dragged from the burning barn and died a few hours later. His final words were reportedly, "Useless, useless." His co-conspirators were rounded up, tried by a military tribunal, and either hanged or imprisoned, bringing a grim end to the plot. So why does this story, from over 150 years ago, still matter so much today? Lincoln's assassination was a pivotal turning point. It didn't just kill a president, it killed a vision for the nation's future. Lincoln had favored a lenient and compassionate approach to Reconstruction, a plan to bind up the nation's wounds and bring the southern states back into the Union with malice toward none, with charity for all. His death removed that moderating voice and empowered more radical elements in the government who sought to punish the South. The period of Reconstruction that followed was far more difficult and contentious than it might have been under Lincoln's leadership. The struggle for civil rights and racial equality, which Lincoln had set in motion, faced immense new challenges. His legacy, however, endures. He is remembered not just as the president who won the Civil War, but as a powerful symbol of democracy, equality, and the enduring belief that a nation conceived in liberty can and must strive to live up to its highest ideals. His story is a powerful reminder that history can turn on a single moment, and that the fight for freedom and unity is a journey that never truly ends. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the moments that shaped our world. Let me know in the comments what other historical events you'd like to see covered. See you in the next video.